Welcome back to the table. I'm Kaleb and this is Taylor, and we're here having a really great time.
Yeah, we are.
We love the table, and you're invited to come sit with us while we have conversations. This is what the table is. It's let's sit around, let's talk about things. It can range from cheese to Jesus. I mean, it's like
all of it,
all of the above. And we want to invite you. He is good, baby. He is Gouda. Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
I love it. Thanks. Oh no, we're going to go into cheese puns here in a second. I can just feel it.
Hang on.
So anyway, we love to talk about all different kinds of things from life to spiritual things, and you're invited to this conversation. Please come have a seat. Maybe something will pique your interest, and maybe it'll cause you to ask questions or seek truth. And if that's the case, then great.
Awesome.
We would love that.
Yeah.
And so, but today, we've got a lot of different things to talk about.
Yeah, we do. So we also if you're new here, we also break our podcast in 3 different things.
Yeah.
We have an appetizer, which is like a small, fun little conversation just to kind of get things going. Yeah. And then we move into an entree, which is typically a little more meaty. And then we end with a sweet dessert. So it's a lot of fun. So today's appetizer is actually, what is your favorite project that you have ever done or completed?
Well, my favorite project, so I really loved remodeling the basement at my house. We did that over COVID, and that was a lot of fun. But maybe the most memorable project that I had was actually my bed frame. It was one of the first projects that I did. Yeah. Actually, no, I got my table I made as well. That one was memorable because I'd made it. It was my first project with like solid oak. Oh. And that's expensive wood when you're used to working like with pine and stuff. And so I was, I went and I made this beautiful table and did an epoxy pour over top. It was the first time I'd done epoxy. Yeah. And the first pour went terribly. It had bubbles everywhere because I didn't have a heat gun, and I tried to use like a blow dryer, and that didn't work out so well. Yeah. And it was bad, and I was really upset about it. And then I did another pour, and it was great, and it worked out just fine.
Did you just pour on top, or like how do you?
I did, okay. Yeah, I did, and it turned out just fine. And so it's really beautiful. It was a custom table that I made for our first home because we didn't really have a good dining space. It was smaller, so I needed a smaller kind of a table, and it's actually up here at church, and that was one of my favorite projects. That and the bed that I built. Yeah. Bed frame that I built was also a lot of fun. That was a larger scale project, but it was memorable for me because I was holding wood on one end. It was late at night, and I was drilling with the other end, and the bit slipped out of the screw, and it went right through my hand, and I got a nice scar from it. And that was a lot of fun.
Is that where the rule came? Like no power tools after 10?
Yeah, that's the exact moment. No power tools after 10 p.m. and because I ran right into my hand, and man, that hurt so bad. Yeah, it hurt so bad. I thought I broke my hand, and I just put some gauze on it and wrapped it up and went to sleep. And my wife was like, "Are you kidding me right now?" So she made me go to the doctor the next day, and because I don't know the last time I had a tetanus shot. And so I went and I got a shot, and then I got a tetanus shot. They cleaned the whole thing out. It was really painful to do that, but super memorable. And it created a new rule in my life: no power tools after 10 o'clock.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what about you? What about you?
So my favorite project was like a larger grand scale kind of thing. Yeah. We renovated a house that was built like 1970 something, and they had updated things over time a little bit, but not much. So we tore down walls. We put in a 25-foot LVL. We moved the laundry room. We moved bathrooms. Yeah. Combined two to make it.
You did so much stuff, dude.
It was a big one.
You basically made a new house with bones.
Basically, yeah. We had to replace 2 floor joists. There's the list goes on. And I think one of the cool things too is, so it's a big transformation, like the old to new. And then we had a lot of support from family and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So we had the support, but also we were 23 when we did that. So it was cool, being young, and I didn't do that full time. That was a side thing. And the fact that we could, go through that whole transformation, and of course, God showed us cool works all the way through it and all that. But that was the largest project I've ever done, and it's a pretty cool turnaround.
So I want to just say this. Yeah, one of the things that I most admire about you has to do with exactly what you just said. You're 23, you're young, but you weren't afraid to jump into something that maybe you didn't have the fullness of understanding. like of how to do. But you're like, you had such confidence and such faith that we can do this.
Yeah.
That you just did it. And you learned along the way. There were things, there were choices that you made and things that happened that you're like, I would not do that again.
Do not buy used cabinets. Like, do not. If you're thinking about, I'll save money.
But I really appreciate the heart to say, you know what, I may not know everything, I may not understand everything, but I'm going to jump in, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to believe, I'm going to have trust, I'm going to have faith. We can get this done.
Yeah.
Like we're if we don't know, we're going to ask, or we're going to figure it out one way or another.
Yeah, we're going to figure it out.
And you did. Yeah. And you sold the house and you made a good amount of money off of it. And, you know, the rest is history.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was my favorite project. And if you would, I would love to see, we're project people. So if you could comment like your favorite project you've ever done. Yep. So it's not.
It could be an art project.
Right. It doesn't have to just be house stuff. It can be, you know, maybe it's your kid. I don't know. Look at
we all know kids can be projects.
Whatever it is.
Whew, come on now.
Yeah. So comment that. I would love to see those. And it got me thinking because we were working on a project last week. It was a very small project. We were hanging some acoustic panels. Yeah. And we had limited resources. We only had 4 L brackets and we were trying to think, well, you were trying to really think. I wasn't being very helpful. But you were trying to think of ways like, how can I make what we have go further? And you're like, well, I could use this piece from over here. It was like holding up a curtain rod or something like that. And that I could tack it in and it'll help support a little bit. Yeah. And you're like, does that make sense?
It was custom work.
That is custom work.
It was custom work, no doubt.
Like shoddy custom work, but custom work. So you asked, like, does that make sense? And I said it, one of my taglines, as I have many, is I don't have to understand.
I don't have to understand.
I'll go with it.
It's fine.
And later that day, the Lord kind of brought that to my remembrance. So it kind of broke some things down. So that's kind of what the conversation is going to be today. Okay. But so there are pros and cons of this. So by you saying, hey, what do you think of this? Over time, Kaleb has proven himself knowledgeable about projects and creative workarounds to the point where I'm like, yeah, it's probably going to work. And if it doesn't work,
we'll come up with another creative workaround.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like this blind trust aspect, and that's awesome because one, there's trust. Yeah. And then there's also this built-in flexibility. Yeah. And I've seen it on other people. I don't typically, because this is like usually, I don't know, like, I don't know.
It takes time to establish that kind of a trust, though. It takes experience together. It's not typically like just out of the blue, random. Like it takes time to establish that kind of thing. Yeah.
Typically, people do have to explain themselves a little bit to me, but not much. Like whatever. But like I was trying to think of like 0.0, like my native, like my, I don't know what good word that would be. Like default. Okay. Thank you. Okay. My default is to be like this. Okay. Especially like in projects with, you know, it's like, I don't need too much explanation. I'll go with the flow kind of. Sure. So I typically see this in other people where they are limited by their understanding. Not because they can't do it, it's because they won't do it because they don't understand.
So not just that they're limited by their understanding, but they're limited by their need to understand.
The permission of their understanding.
Yep.
And I don't know, like that's a quality that I see in others that like, I'm thankful that I'm kind of blindly trusting. Yeah. Because it can slow down progress and the things that you can achieve because of your understanding.
But at the same time, you know, you have things like in Proverbs that talk about get understanding. So like getting that understanding, that's not a bad thing. Yes. It's not a bad thing for people to want to understand. What you're saying, or what it sounds like you're saying, is that sometimes that need to understand everything inhibits or prohibits your movement forward or your surrender, like basically your surrender to God. I'm assuming you're talking about like with God. Yes. Like, okay, like it can prohibit your, if he's told you to do something or instructed you, I've got to know every single detail about everything before I can make my first step. Yes. Versus like the way that God tends to move is like, here's your first step. Spit. Yeah. Right. Here's some spit. I'm going to rub it in your eye. Yeah. And this is what's going to happen. But how does that make sense? How does that work? Hey, you're right. There is for most of us, there is this need to understand the why. I mean, as a pastor, when anything negative happens, the first question is always asked is why.
Yeah.
Why did this happen? As if like us understanding the purpose behind or the reason behind things happening is going to somehow help us to process that happening better, like whatever it was. And often that's not the case.
No.
There's many times where that will even make it worse, and sometimes it's just like, you don't need to know the why right now.
Right.
Which is okay. Like that's okay. Kind of like what you were talking about with how you proceed forward many times. I don't need to know, I don't need to know all of that. But many people, they have to know, like I have to know every single detail. And I think that comes back to ultimately like this place of pride, which is, again, it doesn't matter so much about God, your faithfulness and how much you've proven yourself time and time again. I need to know what our next step is going to be. I've got to know, because I've got to control. And that's a pride thing. Like that comes back to me and what I want, what I need. Most of the time that's rooted in fear. It's just rooted in fear. It's just because I need to know this because I have to have something that I can control. Like I feel this need to be able to control what's going on. And if I don't know, then I feel like I'm out of control. I don't trust enough. I don't have, because the basically what happens is like you have your knowledge and your understanding, and then God has his knowledge and his understanding. And there's this gap in between the two. And that gap is where your faith is supposed to make up for. Like that gap should be where your faith is. That's the bridge, right? Yes. But if you don't have that trust or that faith or that belief, then you're going to try to get closer to his knowledge by asking the why questions and the understanding questions. I got to know this more and more and more and more and more and more and more before I'm finally at a place where I can trust.
Yeah.
Right. And it's similar to like, we people knock Thomas all the time, but it's like, I want to put my fingers in the holes. I want to like Jesus. I want to know what I want to see. You guys got to see him. I didn't get to see him. I'm not going to believe until I, am able to understand what just happened.
Yep.
And Jesus comes back and says, hey, that's fine. He allows it. That's what I love is Jesus meets him in that place.
Yes, he does.
But then on top of that, he says it's you believe because you saw. And you saw, so you understood, right? If you can come back to, you believe because you understand.
Yeah.
But it's better to believe without understanding, without seeing.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole thing about seeing is I see so that I can understand and process what's going on right now.
Sure.
So that it helps me to understand. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But Jesus is saying it's better if you can believe without understanding in that way.
Because there are going to be things that you may miss out on. And it's not because the Lord is withholding it.
Right.
I think there's this like level of, if we're walking with the Lord, he wants to take us places and he's like, yeah, but we're going to go through this cave and you can see nothing. But there's a great view on the other side, but there's going to be a really dark cave.
To see right now.
And you're not going to be able to see. And again, it's not like the Lord is withholding that place from you. It's that we are withholding ourselves because we're not willing to surrender.
Yeah. Well, and I have a 4-year-old son and his MO every morning is, Dad, where am I going today? Who's picking me up? What are we doing? What's going on? Like he needs this schedule for whatever reason in his life right now. He has to have the schedule of like his day totally planned out. And I was the exact same way when I was a kid.
Yeah.
When it came to like chore lists, if you gave me one chore at a time, I could not deal. I needed to know every single thing that was on that list so that I know once I accomplish all of these things, then I'm done.
No way.
Yeah. And my brother and sister were not like that.
Yeah. I was the opposite. Like if you gave me a list, I was like overwhelmed and annoyed.
Yeah. No, I want to know everything that I need to know. Like I want to gather all of this information so then I can make the choice. Do I want to start here? Do I want to start here? Do I want to do this first? Or do I want to do this first? Yeah. And there's people are wired that way. I'm not saying that that's a positive or a negative thing. People are wired that way, but I think that's part of our growth in relationship with Father, through Jesus, through the Holy Spirit, is that he doesn't always give us the full list of things that we need to know.
I think rarely does he give the list.
And so it requires that gap. It requires faith. Yeah. It requires trust. And as you walk with the Lord, he proves his faithfulness over your walk. And so you begin to get to that place, kind of like what you were describing earlier is I've done so many projects with Kaleb that I realize his faithfulness in this. And that I'm just going to say okay to this, even though I may not understand everything. I'm going to say okay to this and we're going to go with it. And then, we'll go from there.
Right. I think faith builds in this flexibility. Like faith brings flexibility with, flexibility in certain areas. Like I will hold on to God as faithful, and I will hold on to that God is true. But the scenario and the way that things play out, I think faith can bring in some flexibilities of I don't need to know the details of everything, and that the results, it may not look like the way that I wanted it to,
right,
or that I would prefer, but it usually turns out better because I'm willing to be open-handed, and I'm willing to go with what he's calling us to walk in and all that.
Well, in that flexibility, he will, it is very interesting. I think there's many times where we want to put God into a box and call it his faithfulness. Like he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Like he's the same. He only does it this way, but his methods vary so much because he's creative. He's a creator and he's a creative God. And, he's not going to be put in a box. Like if you can put God in a box, then is he really God? You know what I mean? And so, I love the phrase, we use it all the time, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not get bent out of shape.
Yes.
I love that. And I think you're right. I think as your faith continues to grow, your flexibility also can grow because you begin to see how God does work in so many different kinds of ways. I mean, even when Jesus is healing the sick and laying hands on people, he did it in different kinds of ways.
Yeah.
And typically for us, like, how are we taught? Well, it's you lay hands, you forgive, you cast out, and it's like, this is the one, like, this is how it has to happen. But it's not like, and oftentimes people are made fun of, like, you see videos of people like, whew, they blew on them and all of a sudden, boom, something happens. Or, they touch them and whoa, something happens. And people make fun of that kind of thing. But you think about what would happen if somebody had a video of Jesus spitting in mud and wiping it on somebody's eye? Like, how viral would that go? It'd be like, who's this lunatic? Like, who's this guy? Like, what is it? What's he on? He's got to be on something, right? It's like, okay, he's on power from all high, on high, he's not high, he's on high, you know what I mean? but I think that's for us. Many times we do that because we're trying to understand, and like you're trying to box it up so that you can control it, because it comes back to pride.
Yes.
What can I control?
Yes.
What can I control? But I love what you said, in that the greater your faith becomes, the more flexible you become in that.
Yeah.
Because you start to trust God.
Right.
Into a place where it's like,
the person, not
right.
Not like the way he
not just
does
the principle.
Things. Exactly.
And I love that. So there's two sides of this coin though, right?
Yeah. So the pro is, because I can be like, I don't have to understand. I'm able to walk in greater things than maybe I would have not been able to, based on the permission of my understanding.
Yeah.
So that's the pro, that I can go further, faster with God. The con is I am learning less about him. So I'm going to come back to projects to kind of just show this like parable. So you trying to explain, this is what I'm going to do. You're trying to show me, hey, I can use other resources. And no, it's maybe not its design purpose, but it's going to serve what we need. And this is how we're going to connect it. This is how we're going to use it. It's going to do exactly what we need to do.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to show me. You're also saying like a confirmation, so that later when I need to hand you said curtain rod holder, that I'm ready to hand it over.
Right.
Because I listened and I learned and I understood this is where we're going.
Yeah.
The Lord is willing to show you where you're going to go, but if we're not willing to understand it,
that's good.
Then you're like, God, show me, God, show me, God, show me. And he's trying, but you're not willing to lay down the old understanding to gain the new understanding.
Ooh, I'm doing a new thing.
Yeah.
Do you not perceive it?
I'm putting rivers in dry places?
Yeah. Rivers and deserts. And then he goes on later on, obviously totally different part of scripture, but even with new wine. Yeah. Like, and those who are unwilling, like you have to lay down the old wine, right? And the old wine is typically the good wine. Like that's the better kind. I mean, that's the better kind of wine. And so, but if you're unwilling to lay that down, you're not going to receive or taste and see of the new wine, and then the new thing that he's trying to do. And oh man, I love that though. Like, cause you're right. Sometimes you can get to a place where you're so like, whatever, God, I trust you in this, that you basically shut your mind off or shut your heart off to trying to learn what he's teaching you in that. Or you're like comfortable. I'm super comfortable. Yeah. I'm so comfortable in this place. Yeah. I knew God. Oh, I know. Wait, no, I knew him. No, wait, no, I know him. Yeah. There's a difference because like, okay, yeah, I knew him 30 years ago and this is the great things he did. And look back at,
I don't know, pick a revival from the 90s. Like, look at the awesome things he does. Like, maybe he should do that again. Nope, I'm actually bringing people to a table, and I'm bringing conversations. I'm healing families, and I'm doing like all these marvelous things. I'm doing a new thing.
Do you not perceive it? And because you're right, because you can get to a place where you become so comfortable in thinking that you understand God because you've put him in your box, and you think that you understand him. So you're like, I don't need to go to church anymore. I've learned what I need to learn. I understand God. I've got the teachings. I've heard the teachings on love and on faith and on healing and on forgiveness and on mercy. And I know those things. I'm good. Right. You get to a place where you become almost so comfortable with your understanding that you're like, I don't need any of those other things anymore. And God's like, hey, you know what? I was moving. Like, I heard one time the definition of religion is falling in love with where God used to be. Hey, and I just thought, whoa, like what a kick in the pants that says that you need to keep moving with me. Come on, like this is the invitation to come here. Like, it may have been 10, 15 years ago that God was showing up in stadiums, but maybe he's now like, hey, I'm going to show up in the homes. Yes. I'm going to show up at the table. Yep. And maybe in the next 10 to 15 years, it's somewhere else. Yeah. Like we can't be so rigid and prideful to think this is it. Again, this is the only way in our own understanding, because I experienced this. And that's oftentimes what ends up happening is you have an experience with God and it changes your life. And you think that's the place where I'm going to find him every single time, all the time. How many times did Moses go back to the burning bush? You know what I mean? Like, or did he see God come through in totally different, like 10 different ways and all these plagues and all these other ways? Like, if he was unwilling, or if he thought like we think all the time, he'd be going back to that bush all the time. God, where are you at, man? Hey, I mean, like,
that's so good.
You know what I mean?
So and the constant wasn't in what he did; it was the person. Yeah. And if we're constantly going back to the other constant, which we thought was a sign or a wonder, right? We're going to be dissatisfied. He's going to let me down. Yeah. When he never did.
Yeah. One of the biggest kind of pet peeves for me, I say this pet peeve as a pastor, is when I hear people talk about, I just want to see God move like he did. And because what they're referring to is, this time maybe at the altar and when they saw something miraculous take place in their life. And I'm with you in that, in the desire. Right, the desires. I want to see people touched by God in the same way that I was. Yeah. Where the disconnect, what I hate is when you think it has to happen in this specific kind of a way, and you miss because I've had so many really cool testimonies about things happening at the table with people. Being set free, being healed, marriages being restored, actual like physical healings taking place, soul healings taking place. And that's not after an altar call and, 30 minutes of worship and prayer happening at the end of a service. And I'm not knocking those things. I'm not saying that that's irrelevant. I'm not saying that God doesn't show up in those places. But what I'm saying is I hate it when people think like this is the box that God has to move in because this is what he did in my life. Yeah. When it's like, well, hey, what happened? What if the woman who touches Jesus, the hem of his garment, walks up to the guy who Jesus spit in his eye and says, well, this is how Jesus heals. Well, no, this is how Jesus heals. And now all of a sudden they get into this massive argument and then it's like, you both missed the point. Jesus healed and heals. Like, but how many times do we get stuck in that place because it's based on our own understanding and our experience with him?
I had a really good thought.
I'm sorry.
No, I really did. No, because what you said was good. And then, oh no, it's gone. It's gone.
It's okay.
Keep going.
But I think, and so those are two sides of the coin, but in both of those sides are I think, steeped in pride.
They are.
Because it comes back to me. Like everything comes back to me and what I think. Whether it's I need to understand so I can control the scenario, or whether it's whatever, this is what I believe, this is what I know, so I don't have to grow. I don't have to be stretched. I don't have to, there's a reason that the Holy Spirit is called the Comforter.
Yeah, he is. So something
you don't need comfort.
After I don't know, you lay hands on you.
Need some suddenly,
hey, shut up. No, so the thought I had while you're talking about like the pet peeve of I wish God moved like this, and they're referring to 20 years ago. It's not annoyance with me. It's like my heart goes out to you that's still the sweetest moment you experience with the Lord, and that's what you're wanting.
Yeah.
Like I want I want you to talk to me about something that the Lord did this morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's this call to intimacy, and that's where this leads to, is where that I don't need to understand. It's like, I don't need to connect with you anymore. Like,
right.
Imagine like if I told that to Caitlin.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Your wife.
We're done dating. Yeah. My wife. Like, we're done dating.
Yeah.
I'm not pursuing you anymore. We're not going to watch any shows together.
Right.
You live your life. I'm going to live my life. Yeah. And I'm still married.
And all, because
go to the law. Go to the law. I'm still married technically, but I'm done pursuing you.
Because all you do is you go back and you reminisce on the wedding day. Mm-hmm. And this is a Kaleb perspective. You can take it for what it is. But if your wedding day was the best day of your marriage, then man, you're missing out.
Yeah, you're
missing out, because that's the genesis, right? Like, this is the genesis of our covenant together. And after so many years, we should be continuing to go. Like, most people don't live from that place. It's like, oh man, it was great back then, and you had your quote unquote honeymoon phase. Like, the honeymoon phase is awesome, right? It's really great. But man, the rest of the phase after that, the growth phase, the depth phase, the challenge phase, all of those things should bring you into a deeper place of relationship together that is sweeter and deeper and richer than what it was even at that point. So you shouldn't be longing for the honeymoon phase or the wedding day or the moment that God first intervened and moved on your life. You should be continuing the depths of your relationship at the table, in the bed, in the car, in the wherever you are, right? Because that's what he does. That's his longing and his heart for you, is to walk in this place of relationship. But many of us don't even know how to do that naturally. So how do you expect them to do it supernaturally and spiritually? Yeah. Right? If that's the mindset of, Jesus saved me, now what? Then you're going to be longing for that day. But you can experience him daily. And that's the point. Like, I need to settle down for a minute.
So that's actually what we're talking about. Is something that Caitlin and I, even like, we're going to go back to like practical, like here, like in marriages, that's something that Caitlin and I really look up to. Like Grammy and Papal, like my grandparents, they model companionship so much, and it's so sweet, and I love it so much. And we've even had like so many conversations about, we want to be companions when we're 80 years old, and that's kind of what the call is with the Lord, is that, okay, you're not just my God, you're not just my Savior, you're not just my healer, you're my companion.
So,
and you've been with me through everything.
Because, and here, like get this picture in your mind. In a relationship, you're married, you got one side who is always desiring and pursuing, who is doing the things that they're laying down their life in love for the other person, but the other person is content with wherever they've been and where they are. They're content with receiving all of the benefits of the love in action, because that's what agape is. They're content in receiving all those benefits, but they're unwilling to do anything themselves. Those kinds of relationships are very challenging, and most of the time they end. Most of the time they end because the person who is walking in that place of agape love gets worn out. Yeah. Right? It's a constant challenge. There is no comfort in the walk.
Right.
And I think about that and I think, man, how much does that relate spiritually with Jesus providing all of this? And how many times are we on the other end of it? Like, man, I just missed my wedding. Right? Like I'm good with receiving everything that you get. Man, you're blessing me so good right now. You're blessing me so good. Oh man, that was a really good song, and that was a really good word, and that was a really good. And it's like, okay, so are you taking this relationship any place? Or do you just sit back and just reminisce on what was?
Right. The revival night that you were crying and you walked up to the altar. Like, because that's what I hear. We hear this message of first love over and over again. And they're not actually talking about first love like him. Typically, they're talking about like how you first felt in the honeymoon phase. Yeah. Versus like, no, my first love is Jesus. And maybe it does look different. Maybe I'm not in the prayer closet for 10 hours because I have kids now. And I'm loving you by loving my wife, because it is all one. Yeah. But yeah, how that would change over. I completely kind of went a little bit different just from what you were saying, but also it is the pursuit of like, I'm going to pursue this person.
It's relationship. It's the discovering the deeper depths of relationship, because it's not like God's running away from you, but it is like He is moving, and you want to move with Him together.
I do,
and that's the thing of it. Like He's not sitting here hiding Himself from you, but He wants you to discover Him. And what's amazing about God is you discover Him and you discover you. Like that's what's incredible about it. And you come into greater understanding. And I think as we kind of like maybe wrap this up, like you get to this new place of understanding as I continue to develop my relationship with Him, as I continue to dive deeper in our relationship by intentionally spending time with Him, by getting into the Word of God, by spending time under the anointing oil of the Holy Spirit, by worshiping, by doing these kinds of things. As I'm doing that, I'm developing a deeper level of intimacy and relationship with Him. And in that, I'm discovering new things about Him and about me, which means I'm coming into a better place of understanding. Right. And so for those who have this, this fear of I need to understand, I think the solution is let's get with Father. Like, let's spend more time with Jesus. And you may not understand everything, but what you will come to understand is His faithfulness. Is His love for you.
Right.
Because His love is going to drive out that fear. When you figure out how much He loves you, all the other stuff starts to, you're like, whoa, why did I even allow that thing to try to come and separate me? To try to, like, it's just what's the acronym? False evidence appearing real. That's what fear is, right? This toothless lion trying to come in and separate me and Jesus, my husband, if I'm the bride of Christ, right? Coming into that place. And I begin to let His love transform my life and transform my understanding. So I get to a place where I don't have to understand every detail about what you're doing, because I do understand that you love me, that you are faithful, and that this is where you want us to go. So we're going to go this place. And the same is true on the other side of the coin, where you've got, oh yeah, whatever happens, like you're good, like we're good. Instead of basically like washing your hands of growth, you're saying, Jesus, I may not understand, and I'm okay with not understanding, but I am going to move, and I'm going to get off my butt, and I'm going to pursue whatever it is that you're doing with all of my heart, right? Doing heartily as unto the Lord.
Maybe part of it is asking questions and being childlike.
And I think that's so important.
Like, Lord, kind of like how Daniel is. Oh man, what's on the agenda today? Lord, what's on your heart?
He asks so many questions, Taylor. And as I'm listening to them, my flesh wants to be like, bro, are you ever going to give it a rest? But my heart is also like, I want you to learn. I want you to understand. And I want to be patient with you. I want to model that patience with Him. I don't ever want to say something that's going to cause Him to stop asking questions of me. And God doesn't do that with us.
No.
He's patient and He is long suffering with us. And even in our ignorance and lack of understanding, we ask the same question over and over and over and over and over and over again. I totally get that, but that's been a thing for me. I think that is also, and that's a point of growth, right? Like this is how He is helping me as a person to grow and demonstrate and showing me what His love is like through my own son, who is asking these irritating types of questions over and over that don't make sense or they don't mean anything. And I have to be at a place, He's teaching me how to be at a place where I'm not getting all frustrated by this. That I'm not allowing His questioning or His position of insecurity to then dictate my responses toward Him. My responses are determined by heaven, not by my flesh, not by my soul, not by my emotions, right? Like, so God is teaching me in this thing with going on with my son asking questions, that it's okay to ask questions and to be patient. And I think that's such a really cool lesson for each and every one of us. He's not threatened by our questions.
No, the Lord is approachable, and He wants to answer those questions. And He's given us the spirit of knowledge. And of wisdom. In the revelation and the knowledge of Him. Like that's who resides in us. The Lord put that hunger in us. And maybe that's kind of the sweet dessert today is that, yes, there's this hunger to know more. And the Lord wants this idol of needing to understand squashed and shattered. He wants that gone, but He desires you to know Him more, so much so that He gave you that desire. to want to know him more. So maybe the application or all that could be ask the Lord some questions. As you're reading, don't just read and be like, and why is that?
Yeah.
Ask, I mean, because that was one of the things you talked about earlier was like pastors tend to ask why about situations and children tend to ask why and how. Let's begin to like not just read the scripture, but Lord, you're faithful. Lord, why are you faithful? Let me show you more about my love and how it's insane about you and that it is insanity. And I'll do the same thing over and over and over again. Even though it may not look like it's working on the outside, it's doing a work in you.
And I think just even from a practical sense, one thing that the Lord had me start doing whenever I encountered challenges in my own life that would cause me to want to ask that question, why? You know, someone dies or something negative happens to me or whatever. And I would want to naturally just be like, why, God? What's the problem here? He redirected my question from why to, Lord, how can you and I grow tighter in this? Like how can our relationship deepen in this? And I think those are the kinds of questions that he's really, really willing to answer in those kinds of moments. And every time that happens, you know, he reveals something new in my life, or he shines light on areas in my life that he's like, this is what I want. This right here. I want this territory in your heart. I want like right here in this, and our relationship has grown in the hard, challenging kinds of times. Yeah. You know, and which we get to, like James says, count it as joy.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think maybe, you know, just to wrap it up right here, you know, just some practical things to be able to leave with you today who's listening.
Yeah.
Questions that we can ask and be childlike in that. I think that's a really great thing.
Yeah. Jesus, we thank you for the opportunity to be childlike, that you're not frustrated when we're childlike, but that's actually your desires, that we would ask questions, that we would be hungry for you. And we thank you for God, I pray for a greater hunger and for a greater thirst to know you more and to be like you, because that's who you've made us to be. Thank you for joining us today at the table.
You'll always have a seat here.
Yay. Yay.